When one first comes to the Sangha, one should live in a community, because one has to learn a lot. And by learning a lot, one finds out about the Sangha and finds one's own place in it and what its worth is, and one learns the basis of the practice, basis of the meditation practice. If you start going off on your own too quickly, you're likely to find either disappointment or trouble. Disappointment can come because one hasn't taken enough account of one's own kilesas. One's own kilesas are there, and when one puts on the robe, the kilesas are still there. They don't just fly away when you put on the yellow robes. And because of that, wherever one goes, one takes one's kilesas with one. One takes the trouble with one, because they're inside. Because of that, you need to get the first grounding where there are other people who can keep you straight, where you can test yourself against other people, and in fact get rid of quite a number of the kilesas. The sort of outer ones, the more gross things, can be got rid of there. When one has done enough in the community, and one has learnt what's necessary, then one can go off on one's own into the forest or wherever one wants. And one can then gain value, but not everybody. Some people find that they go off to the forest and their mind's just wandering. They can't keep it still. They can't get down to the practices they used to. And those people probably are not suited to go to the forest. Certainly not to begin with anyway. For the person who goes off to the forest, the advantages are, of course, that they can practice their own meditation without hindrance, without having to do a lot of chores and duties, and without having to refer to anyone else. These are quite valuable things for the person, but if they're not careful, they can go the wrong way, and they can start getting upset, even angry at the difficulties in the forest, because there are difficulties. And if one's got the right attitude, the difficulties are a very good teacher. They're one of the best teachers, in fact. I mean, if you meet up with wild animals, tigers and the like, then you know there that you're face to face with a tiger. He can eat you up if he wants, and it's the only thing you've got on your side is Dhamma. And if you bring up the Dhamma, you'll be okay. But one's got to bring up the Dhamma and not just give way to fear. And many people give way to fear. This isn't good. The tiger may not eat you, but still it set up within you something which might cause a lot of trouble if you give way to it. The difficulty is that when fear comes up, it comes up strong, unbidden, and catches you off balance, sort of, and you don't know what to do. And that fear can sort of take over. It takes over and controls you. A person can just sort of stand there quivering. And if he doesn't get back to Dhamma, if he doesn't get the idea of Dhamma in his mind, he may go mad. No. It can cause a lot of damage. But if he's strong enough, and if he's done enough practice for the Dhamma to come up in his mind, then it can be very valuable. The overcoming of that fear is one of the major things that's necessary. Fear, as Tanachal Mahabua says, fear is an enemy which comes up in the guise of a friend. It makes out that it's a friend warning you, but in fact it makes you do all the wrong things. And because of that, the fear must be overcome. Going to the forest can be of great advantage. There's no doubt about it. But one shouldn't too easily go to the forest. One must remember, you may have problems coming up and questions coming up. And the way of those who go to the forest mostly is that if they have problems they can't solve, they go back to the teacher and ask him. It may be just a visit for half an hour, and then they go back to the forest again. But one must keep in touch with the teacher. The other thing to watch out for in the forest, of course, particularly for Farangs, is the effect of food. The food you get in the villages is often quite insufficient, and sometimes it's not even good. You might get stomach trouble. In fact, many do. The putting up with stomach trouble is also a good thing to do. But health does need looking at a little bit. One mustn't just sort of blindly think that one can go on and neglect one's health. That's not the way of Dhamma either. The way of the Dhamma and the way the teachers say is one shouldn't put oneself in difficulties unnecessarily. If one does that, one's careless, one's being careless. And carelessness is one of the things that they all say one should not develop, one should overcome. One should always be careful and watchful. And both of these things strengthen one's mindfulness.
I was talking with a friend today, and we were talking about the nature of, like, one of us was under the impression that the kilesas, the defilements, are in the khandhas, and then another one of us was under the impression that the kilesas are in the chitta. And there's a big misunderstanding about what's the chitta. It's like, is it number 6 on top of the 5 khandhas?
No, you can see what the 5 khandhas are. First of all, you've got the body. That's part of the world. And that's the first khandha. It's made of the world. It's made of the substance of this world. It relies on the world, depends on it. It's completely geared to the world. Most of the things we do depend on the body and the world. You look round you. This building, for instance, why is it this shape and this size? It's because of the human body. And why are the stairs like that just spread so much? Because that's the height we can step. And why do we have the lights on? Because we need light to see things, because of our eyes. If we didn't have eyes, we wouldn't need light. You look at the things all around you, where the body comes in, you find they're endless. So the body is part of the world. And the other khandhas, the feeling, memory, thought and consciousness, those 4, they depend on the body. And when the body dies, they just break up and disappear. Without the body, there's no support for them. I mean, it only requires a doctor to inject some anesthetic into oneself, and the khandhas, all you're left with is nothing. The body goes on as a function. The other khandhas, as far as we know, they all cease temporarily. And when one comes round again, it starts to work again. And these khandhas, they're dependent on the body, and there's nothing absolute about them at all. And they're not kilesas either. Because they depend on the body, They're neutral. They're neutral like the body. And they're really not part of oneself fundamentally. They're for our use. I use the simile of a computer. The body's like the hardware, and it's got to be there. The four namakandas are like the software, and the computer's no good without the software. You've got to have that. And the chitta is like the person who uses it. And the person who uses the computer can make it do good things or bad things or stupid things. It can sort of push it about all over the place. And it's similar with our khandhas. The chitta is the one which plays with them, pushes them about. It's the master of them. And the khandhas are all used for the sake of the chitta, or developing whatever it wants. And if the chitta was pure, it wouldn't matter. But it's not. It's got kilesas in it. And it's the chitta with kilesas that cause all the trouble. If it wasn't for the kilesas being in the chitta, when the body died, the kilesas would all disappear. We wouldn't have any. But the fact is they're in the chitta, which doesn't die. So they carry on. They go to the next life. And because of that we come back again and again like that. So one must see that the kilesas are in the chitta, not in the khandhas. But the khandhas take on those aspects of the kilesas which the two chittas make them take on. For instance, anger. Anger starts off in the chitta, and then the kilesas respond with, first of all, consciousness, becoming aware of it, then the memory associating with whatever's produced this, then the thought processing it and making it bigger and bigger with anger, and then the feeling coming up. Feeling comes from what one's doing. From that anger you get the feeling then, which comes back again to the chitta. These kilesas, they're the things which push us around all the time. The whole process of Buddha Dhamma and the whole process of developing the meditation practice is in order to get rid of these kilesas. That's the prime thing. It may sort of also develop other things. Some people get psychic powers. Some people can sort of see the future and the past and things like that. But these are byproducts. They're not the main thing. The main thing is getting rid of those kilesas. In fact, I would say the psychic powers and things of that sort can be a disadvantage. They can lead one astray very easily. And the person who has them or finds that they have them should be very cautious and not get caught in them. Because if one plays with them, they become sticky. It's like when you play with them, you want to know what's happening somewhere, and then you get in the habit of wanting to know all the time, and one gets caught in the habit of playing with the psychic phenomena. Then this can be a big trap, and one should resist it very much. After all, we've got enough powers already. If we want to fly, we can get in an aeroplane and go up. It's quite easy. And if you want to know what's happening the other end of the world, well, we've got radio, television, telephones, the lot. You can quite easily do it.
What's the relationship of the chitta and nibbana?
The pure chitta is nibbana. The chitta that we have is the chitta that's been usurped by the kilesas. And because it's been usurped by the kilesas, it becomes a changing thing. in the ultimate sense, you can say that Nibbana is always there, and that even the functioning of the kilesas is part of the situation. But this is an ultimate sense, an ultimate way of looking at it, and it doesn't mean that one mustn't work. The relation of the citta to Nibbana, though, is that in the normal way of things, the citta that we have, or our citta, we call it the citta, but we don't know what it is really. That one is so involved with kilesas that we can't see it, because the citta is not something you can see. It's a function. It's hard to say what it is, because everything we know in this world is impermanent, changing, and we only know the citta in its changingness, in the way it changes all the time. If you come to the pure citta, you can't know it. You can't know it in the way we know things here, because there's no duality in that. When there's no duality, we've got no function that we can know it by, except the citta itself. That goes rather high.
Can you say something about the relationship between citta and consciousness?
Yes. When consciousness arises, the citta is the one that sort of empowers it. Like if you want to make this microphone give a sound out there, it has to be empowered by sound, by speaking, or whatever it is. It can't do it on its own. And vijnana can't function on its own. Vijnana functions because the citta makes it function. And my own interpretation is that the vijnana is the citta turning into dualism. So that sort of breaks into two. When it breaks into two, it's back in the world, straight away. And you get the citta and what it knows. And that's vijnana. So there must be the object side and the subject in vijnana. It must be dual.
The citta is pure knowing without an object?
Yes, you can say that, yes. If it's a pure citta, though, because the kilesa citta always has an object. The way it functions is always there. And because of that, we who've got kilesas have always got kilesas, and there is always delusion. Greed or hate may be present or may not. But I look on greed and hate as being the two arms of delusion. They come out of delusion. Without delusion there wouldn't be greed or hate. You can see that avijja is the starter of it. It's the thing that built it up. And the delusion is always there in us. It's there in us because once you get duality, and it's a functioning duality, and it's caught up with the citta, then it's always there as a duality, and that duality means that it's delusion. We can't see it. We can't see what's wrong because we've learned things, and we haven't questioned them properly. For example, when we were a young child, we learned things from our dad, our mum, from teachers, from all sorts of people, and we're too young to question them. We just accepted. And these things go in very deep at that age. They stick there. And when we become adults, we still have those things in us. The child is still there. And the child comes out, in fact, often. And it comes out mostly in an emotional mode. It's the emotions that the child comes up in. And I mean, you can see if you look in yourself and other people, you'll see it. You'll see the child working. And all this sort of stuff that's come from childhood is riddled with delusion. Because we have attitudes, ideas, ways of thinking, beliefs, all sorts of things. I mean, you look at the strength of the belief in God that some religions have. They can't drop it. They're absolutely caught up in it. That came from childhood. We're all mixed up. As I said yesterday, the only normal people are the arahants. All the rest of us are peculiar. It's true, because we've got kilesas.
The emotional residues from many people's childhood is guilt. Do you have any recommendations for people who suffer from guilt?
Well, I think I said something about it last night, but never mind. The way to deal with guilt is very definitely at first to accept it. The trouble is we instinctively try to resist the guilt, saying, I'm not guilty, I'm perfectly all right. If you turn and you say, all right, accept the guilt, I am guilty. And what am I guilty of? I don't know. You probably won't know what you're guilty of even. You say, well, all right, I'm guilty. What do we do now? And you'll find that the whole thing starts to break up. You may have to do it many times, but it will break up. The important thing though is to accept it. Because you can see that, in a sense, the guilt is there. It's a valid thing. Because it's the I that's guilty, the self. And that's a delusion to start with. So if one accepts the guilt there, if it helps to diminish that I a bit, you don't lose anything. All you're losing is a bit more delusion. Guilt is very, very common. Many people have it. But that's built up from the past, there's no doubt about it.
Regarding your own practice, could you share some of your breakthrough experiences and what actions or efforts appear to support those breakthroughs?
I don't like thinking about my own practice. No, one can't talk much about that, really. I mean, some things you can't explain, anyway. And some things you don't know why they come about. I mean, one gets, by practice and development, one gets a sense of certainty, a sense of knowing where one's going, although one hasn't actually got there. But this is a sense you can't describe it, you just got to do it. That's all. The really important things that happen in practice, though, it's no good talking to people about it and telling them, because it doesn't mean, it wouldn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to someone who hasn't got the experience. It's like Ajahn Panyavaddho says, he doesn't like talking about jhana to somebody who doesn't know what jhana is, who hasn't experienced it. And there's a lot of talk about jhana, and there's a lot of people who have got an idea what it is, and it's all wrong. Ajahn has said that the person who has the characteristics of jhana inherently in them, and it's in their karma, must go that way. Other people shouldn't try it. one shouldn't try and develop jhana if it's not in one's character. One should develop samadhi. That's enough. But the difference between jhana and samadhi, Tanachan didn't state. He didn't say. All he says is it's different. And he says if you don't know what it is, then keep to samadhi.
In one of the Ajahn Panyavaddho books I've read, he's talking about using a parakama object for developing samadhi. How essential is it for someone who wants to develop samadhi to have something which they always bring their mind back to throughout the day, all day, every day?
Yes, very essential. Tanachan said when he was practicing to begin with, he used the parikama buddho. He used that, the repetition of buddho internally. And he had done this for quite a long time. And he said his practice developed, then it deteriorated. And it developed again, it deteriorated. Constantly was doing this. In the end he got fed up with this. And he said the only thing I must do is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on with that buddho and not stop for anything. The only time I stop is when I go to sleep. This is what he did, and he did that. And after a time the results came. He got into samadhi. And this is the value of a parikama. You must have something to hold on to. Otherwise the mind just jumps to other things. And it's not good to jump from one parikama to another if you find this one doesn't work. Because nearly always if you do that, you'll find that the first parikama goes up to a certain point, then you get a block. You can't go further. And one's got to overcome that. And the way is really just to keep on with the one parikama, and that's it. One shouldn't be changing parikamas often. If you feel after some time that you can't get on with one, or you can't find it doesn't work, all right, change. But don't change just because it becomes a bit difficult.
So if someone's main object for samadhi was like the breath.
Like?
The breath. So during the day, would they is it to have a mantra as well to make it more easy to watch during the day, or what's the usual? You can use
that. You can use like buddho and the breathing. If you put the two together, that's all right. Yes. In the ways of kamatana, incidentally, the word kamatana, some of you may not know what it means. Kamatana is the Pali word kamma, which means action, and tana, which means a basis. So it's a basis for action, a basis for practice, in other words. It means that not only the practice of meditation, but also the practice of training oneself in all sorts of other ways. The sort of training you do based on the vinaya is part of it. And the training you do by learning to get on with other people. In Thai it's called samagi in Pali, I think also. It's the getting together with other people and the doing things with other people, and not always just wanting to do it on one's own. And these are a great help. All these sort of things are a great help. The external things as well as the meditation practice. In fact, one can overcome many kilesas, gross kilesas, by practical things that one does outside. You know, if somebody says, "Oh, you go and do that," well, the tendency is to say, "Why the hell do you pick on me?" But the person who's training themselves and who's thought about it and said, "Yeah, the dissension comes up in me, but I'm going to do it because I'm practicing. And I go and do it. And this is the way to overcome a lot of the kilesas. But the parikamma is important, very important. And if you really want to get into the samadhi practice, the way to do it best is to keep it going the whole time. You keep the breathing going with whatever you do. After all, whatever you do, your breathing's going to be there anyway. You're not going to hold your breath all day long. It's got to be there. And the thing is just being aware of it. And the way of being aware of it is not necessarily trying to be very one-pointed or very concentrated on it, but it's just being mindful of it. After all, it is called anapanasati. It's got sati at the end there. So it's the mindfulness of breathing, which means you just have that awareness of the breath all the time, even though you're doing other things.
What about when you're doing sweeping or manual labor? Is it advisable to have the breath as
Yes. Yes, certainly. After all, when you're sweeping and doing manual labor, it's quite easy to be thinking about other things. It's quite easy to be thinking about your home or your interests or whatever it is. Why not think about the breathing instead? Actually, talking about thinking of the breathing is wrong. It's not thinking about it, it's just awareness of it. And I think if you do that, when you're aware of the breathing, you'll find your awareness tends to be on other things and on your sweeping or whatever you're doing also.
Also reading from Ajahn Panyavaddho, talking about how two approaches to practice. Samadhi develops panya and panya develops samadhi.
Yes.
If someone fell in the panya develops samadhi, would they still keep up a parikamma during the day?
Yes, you can have a panya parikamma. There are such things. But panya from samadhi is for those people whose mind becomes very interested in thinking about things and sort of seeing how they work, and you think about your own body and bits and pieces and see how it works. And if you can do that, that can lead to samadhi. It can lead to samadhi by what happens is the interest in the thinking starts to concentrate the mind. As it concentrates the mind, you get the factors of piti and sukha coming up, and it goes into samadhi. It's like any work. If you do it and you do it for some time, it's quite likely to become interesting. When it becomes interesting, it becomes rather intriguing, and then because of that you want to do it, and you go on doing it, and that can lead to samadhi. But if a person finds too much distraction, the mind won't stick on anything, then they must use the samadhi develops panya. Let's use the normal method.
Paul, did I understand you correctly last night? Did you say that it's possible to have profound realizations and not be aware of it?
No. It's possible to have profound realizations and not to know what they are. Like something happens, or you see bright lights or something coming up, and one feels good inside, and so on. Then you look at that and you say, well, I know there were bright lights there, and I know what I heard, I know what I felt, but I don't know what it was. That's quite possible. I mean, should you call it samadhi? Should you call it jhana? Should you call it stream entry? You don't know, because one hasn't got the the experience of that. One's never experienced it before, something new, and one doesn't know what words to put to it. Because the experience is like actually walking the path, or walking the road. Whereas the ideas you have are the map. And often you can't recognize the road from the map.
If someone does experience seemingly profound insights, would you just recommend not putting a label on it and just keep on with the practice?
Yes, very definitely, yes. Putting labels on it is dangerous, because putting labels on it, the person thinks, oh, I'm so dark now, and put up my stars here. And that can be a big hindrance. Also, the person can develop conceit on that too.
Speak a little bit more on that, on conceit, when there's success in practice.
Conceit is important. It's a factor of greed. And conceit is the promotion of self. It's the making out that self is good. Self is maybe better than other people. Self is, very pure, very straight. It's these sort of ideas. The main trouble with it is, though, when you do that, you build up self higher and higher and higher. And when it comes down, it hurts. As it surely will. Because it's like the fall of the two towers in America. You can see there the sort of the analogy of conceit, where they're all sorts of wonderful things, and then bang, they're gone, and they didn't like it at all. Can't blame them, but I mean the thing is, this is the way conceit works. The conceit comes about by thought, and the thoughts with conceit are things that one must look at often and realize what they are. And the best thing is, when you have thoughts of conceit, quickly turn around and find the opposite in oneself. Shouldn't be too difficult. See where one's got plenty of kilesas too. You put a bit of balance on it then.
When one's investigating thoughts, thinking process, how much attention should one give to the content of thinking, or should one rather attend to the specific factor, like it's rising or vanishing?
The content of thinking is important, because by the content of thinking, the attitude changes. When one thinks of something, one takes on up the emotional attitude associated with that. This is why, when you say parikamma, you use the word buddho, not some other word which is meaningless or bad, or has bad connotations. No, it's quite important the connotation, what one thinks about. But if bad thoughts come up, even though you don't want them, then all right, if they come up on their own, let them come up, but look at them. Look at what they are. One mustn't try just the suppression of thought like that. That has a bad effect. But it only has a bad effect if they're very strong thoughts, if they come up strongly. And some people, they get thoughts coming up like that. Very funny bit in the book. A psychiatrist who was working in a mental hospital, and there was one patient in the hospital, an old Scotsman. He's saying all the time he's talking like, "Get away from me, you filthy people. Get away. Don't tell me these things. I don't want to hear them." He was going on like that, swearing and sort of with very bad language. And so the doctors sort of consulted together what should they do. They thought, we better give him leucotomy. That's when they put the needles in and mess the brain up. So they did this. And afterwards he said, "Oh, speak up, I can't hear you." "Where are you? I can't hear you now." And the doctor thought, "Oh, it's an improvement." That is. There you're getting somebody who really, the thoughts coming out. They couldn't stop them. Thoughts, and I mean, he obviously had the full belief that there was somebody telling him these things, not realizing it's coming from his own kilesas all the time. One must not underrate the potential of the mind to produce strange phenomena. Anybody who's read anything about the phenomena in, for example, schizophrenia and other psychic phenomena will realize that the mind can produce almost anything with great strength. So one must be cautious, very cautious, when anything arises like sound, like people talking to you, because the chitta is quite capable, chitta with kilesas is quite capable of creating this. The other thing, of course, is if you do get voices coming up, don't do what they say unless it's absolutely reasonable. You must conform to reason. And one must think about it and see whether it's reasonable or not. If it's reasonable, all right, doesn't matter. But if it's something bizarre, I would never do it.
In the synthesis, it gives 4 different kinds of sense restraint. In the 4th one, it says the signs and qualities of objects.
Yes, that's all right. Yeah. I would interpret that to mean that when any object comes up in mind, you don't grasp. The sign of it usually means the memory content associated with it. In other words, that triggers off memory, and that would be the sign. The content of it will depend on what it is. Presume that the content is probably either something that has meaning, like speech, or visible written word, or something that's a symbolic content. And one merely notes these things without grabbing hold of them. Because if you grasp, they take the mind away straight away. It's like when you start doing the meditation practice, whether it's Anapana or the Buddha practice or almost any other, you get memories coming up. And they bring up thoughts, objects, all sorts of things. And when these memories come up, one's natural tendency is to think, what's that? And one grasps it. And that is tanha. One wants to know. It's wanting. And the correct thing to do there is to have mindfulness, to be aware of this, and to see the danger that this is pulling me away from the meditation practice. And to then say, I'm not interested in this. This isn't what I'm doing. I don't want these thoughts. I'm not going to think of them. But to do that often requires some training. One has to sort of reflect time after time when one gives way and forgets. Bit by bit one can get it. One can bring it up so that it comes up immediately. It's like a red flag comes up inside. A warning, this is dangerous.
He also mentions the natural sense restraint of an arahant.
Probably the meaning is that when a person attains arahant, Tanachan has said like this, he's explained it. When a person attains arahant, the chitta goes quiet. Chitta is inside, and that's unmoving. But the 5 khandhas are still there, and they're going to act. And they're going to act much in the way they did before, except that there won't be any fire there. The fire will have gone. The kilesas have gone, in other words. The state of an arahant is. The 5 khandhas are there still, but the kilesas have gone. Well, they've disappeared. There are no kilesas left. Because there are no kilesas left, the 5 khandhas don't do wrong things. And in that state, there is no kamma. Kamma is not produced. What is done, they say, is what they call kriya, which means mere action. And that doesn't make kamma. Technically, as I understand it, in the normal person you've got the bhavanga chitta, and the moments of bhavanga link one with another. Because of that, there's the idea of time comes up, the idea of continuity. With the arahant, that's broken. And so the continuity isn't inherently there. And because of that, the tendency is for any action to be just that action. And it doesn't follow on. It doesn't sort of go on into a train of things like most people. But don't worry too much about being an arahant, because things must change a lot before that, I think.
You have any recommendation for sensory strain for pathogens?
Yes, certainly. But the sense restraint of a pathogen with the ordinary person is something that they have to do. They have to recognize it and not let go. Because fundamentally we've always got that choice there, and that is the choice of the chitta, to do it or not to do it.
Why is appreciation and acceptance, the practice of appreciation and acceptance, not enough?
Appreciation of
everything.
Of everything. The appreciation of everything is also putting an attitude onto everything, views. And the tendency there will be for the mind to go far and wide. And what one has to ask is, who is doing the appreciation? Who and what? And one will find, if one looks at the khandhas, that the appreciation there will be basically thinking probably about the world. And although the thoughts may not be particularly harmful, it's still not the way. One can have appreciation, certainly. There's nothing wrong in that. But it's not enough on its own. It's difficult to understand what's necessary. We're trying for nibbana, and fundamentally for nibbana, in the end one has got to give up everything. Everything without exception. Because anything that's left will pull you back. In other words, nibbana is the state of non-dualism. It's a complete purity. It's emptiness, meaning empty of the world. Now if you have anything there at all, it'll keep you back, it'll prevent you getting there. It's like the person who's done a lot of practice and they find everything's empty, everything's gone, and they still can't get there, and they go to the teacher and ask him what's wrong, why shouldn't I get it to nibbana by this? They say, well, you're still there. While he's still there, it won't do, it won't go. If he gets out of it, out of the way, if the self gets out of the way, okay, there's I mean, in that case you can say the self is wanting Nibbana. While the self is wanting Nibbana, it can't get Nibbana. When it stops, gives up, and there it is, as it should be. In fact, as it always was. Don't think Nibbana is far away. It's not. Nibbana is there in oneself always. Tajahn Mahabodh once described it, it's like as though it's within you, but it's